Welcome everyone to Living with the Times. This week's Torah portion is Shmini. Shmini means the eighth day. What eighth day is alluded to here? This is occurring on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, when the tabernacle, the Mishkan, which Israel built in the desert, was finally ready to be put up and to begin the service of the Kohanim and the Levim in the temple. In the Mishkan. The temple comes from the Mishkan. The Mishkan is the prototype of the temple and the service that happened. And so Shmini means the eighth. And according to tradition, they put up and took down the Mishkan for 7 days, like a practice run, putting it up and taking it down. Only on the eighth day did it remain up and the service began. And so we know in Numbers, the number 7, which is such an important number throughout the Torah and Jewish tradition, always represents a cycle of time. That's why there's so many different laws and customs and holidays and rituals that have 7 in them, because it represents a full cycle of events. And the number 8 represents one beyond nature, one beyond the natural cycle. There's a symbol of this in the symbol of the infinity sign, which is the number 8 on its side. The idea of no beginning and no end, infinite, beyond borders, beyond boundaries. And so why was the Mishkan put up on the 8th day? And that is to tell us that there was something beyond nature happening in the Mishkan. Later in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, we have the statement that there were 10 ongoing miracles that happened in the Mishkan and the temple. And actually in the Talmud they discuss there are actually even more than 10. But the sages spoke about 10 miracles that were happening. And so obviously the whole experience of coming to the Mishkan, coming to the temple, was a somewhat miraculous experience. And we could ask, but what is the source of 10 different miracles? And that is the tradition. The word Mishkan, which we translate as tabernacle, is the root of shochen, to dwell. And this becomes the root of the word that is used to define God's presence in the world. God's immanent presence is called the Shekhinah. Shekhinah comes from the root shochen. And so the Mishkan was a place where God's infinite being could have a resting place in this world. So here we see the source of the miraculous ongoing events in the temple and the Mishkan was because God's presence was there. And when God commanded Moshe and gave over all the instructions for building the Mishkan, so the Midrash says, Moshe said to God, I don't really understand. The whole universe cannot contain you. How can this little tabernacle contain you? This is what's called the secret of the little that holds a lot. This is symbolized with the letter Yud, the first letter of God's name. So Ma'at shemachzik ha-merubeh. The little that holds a lot. That is what the Mishkan was. And so here we see the idea of the infinite coming to dwell within the finite, which is very paradoxical because almost by definition, the finite cannot hold the infinite. And yet, that was the secret of the temple. That's the secret of God's presence in this world. That infinity is accessible, can be experienced in this world. And the Mishkan and the temple represented that idea. And now we can understand the whole incident of Nadav and Avihu, which we discussed in the previous Living with the Times, where Nadav and Avihu, two sons of Aaron, bring an offering on the day that the tabernacle is erected and the service begins, but they did it without being commanded to do. And their souls, quite literally, were taken by God. A fire came out and consumed their souls. And as we learned, Nadav and Avihu, in a certain sense, wanted to be consumed by God. They wanted to go beyond the borders of the finite. They wanted to reunite with the infinite. And that, in a sense, was their mistake, is that the infinite can be experienced, but our purpose is to be a soul in a body, not a soul that leaves the body. We can have very, very high and elevated and transcendental experiences, but we always have to remember that our purpose is tikkun, is rectification and clarification and elevation and purification and healing in this world. And so this week's Parsha is called Shmini, but it gives us a sense that we can experience the infinite in the finite. So I bless everyone to have those kinds of experiences, but to never lose track of our ultimate purpose is to rectify this world and to make it a dwelling place for God.